you mentioned it going into break. Might as well start with this. Troy Dannen asked today at the press conference about the new stadium not new stadium, but the stadium renovation project. And Dannen admitted, he said he didn't know anything about it. Yeah. He's being brought up to speed on it very quickly. But it was what he said after that was the most interesting. And I heard this described for a project that is there to actually benefit the fans and their enjoyment of the game. I was so amazed by the amount of pushback towards it. And the main pushback was, well, this isn't going to help NIL, and this isn't going to help us get players. It's not going to help us win, so I don't want it. I don't care if I have to sit on rusty bleachers and thumbtacks.
Nails.
Let's get a tetanus shot.
If it doesn't help us win. And Troy Dannen,
he said essentially that part.
He said if it helps us win, great. If not.
Will this help them win? No. The answer is no. This is not there was nothing a part of South Stadium that was for the players. This was all for, and Trev said this is for the fans.
Yeah.
And I liked that, but I got that same vibe from people in my life. I told the story the week that Trev left when you were gone, where I went to a family function that previous Sunday, and we were talking about various things, and the South Stadium project came up. And multiple family members of mine hated it. They're not in South Stadium, for the record. They have season tickets, but not in South Stadium. But they didn't like the idea of fans losing their seats for however much time that would have been, a couple of seasons. They didn't like the idea of stadium capacity shrinking. And I know that I have heard those two complaints from fans, again, that are not even affected by it directly. They don't like the idea of the stadium getting smaller, and they don't like the idea of people being taken out for a season. And what you just said, they don't think it will help them get better on the field, so who cares? Why does that matter? I heard that a lot, and sadly, I think Trev overplayed his hand, and I think it's DOA.
Well, there are clear. It's now more clear than ever. There are two things that chase Trev out: politics, or the inner politics at NU, and I think the pushback from either donors or folks on the inside towards his stadium project were the two things, I think, two of the main things that pushed him out, that led him to Texas A&M.
Jay says, where would you get the money? $600 million is a waste of money. And see, that was the other part, is that it seemed like fundraising for that was a struggle.
But $200 million for another new locker room after you just built a locker room,
but that's for the players.
Years ago.
That's for the players, though. Isn't that interesting how, and I guess shout out to the fans who are like, I don't want anything, give it all to them. I guess you're being selfless in a way. But it is interesting that this would, Dave says, I'd argue that stadium improvements can and would help NU, more revenue, better home field advantage, etc. But going back to the comment from Jay, and then going all the way back to the story from the Flatwater Free Press and some of the things that I heard last November, raising funds for that were going to be difficult. And I heard that from people I trust all the way back in November.
Well, yeah,
and that ended up being the case.
Yeah. So, yeah, for those of you who didn't want, the people in South Stadium to be able to go to the bathroom, congratulations. You win.
Piss your pants, folks.
Or have a nice Pepsi cup to pee into.
Yeah, where's the cup at? We don't have
don't they sell soda in bottles
there
now,
you go.
so it makes it easier. You can put the lid back on.
There you go. That's a great call. Oh, hey, Bob, can I have some of your Mountain Dew? Feel free.
On Matt Rule, Troy Dannen, I don't know. I think this is more hyperbole. I don't think this is actual statistic. It'd be a hell of a statistic if it was true, that nobody ever beat Matt Rule's Temple team after they played them. Or no one ever won a game after after they played Temple.
So they beat him twice?
Yeah.
That can't be true.
But I think he was showing how much he respects Matt Rule. He said, put that guy in this gold mine and watch good things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently Troy Dannen was a huge fan of the Matt Rule hire when he was still at Tulane.
Mm-hmm.
But it's clear that, and the relationship to Pat Kraft, the Penn State athletic director, was a big part of this whole triumvirate, because it sounded like Matt Rule or someone, or I'm sure it was Matt, probably reached out to Pat Kraft and said, would you be interested in coming here? Or if not, do you have a name in mind? The name was Troy Dannen. The rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
So it is clear, again, it is clear that two key figures made this hire.
Yeah.
Matt Rule, Jim Pillen.
Kyle writes, noted Wisconsin fan Kyle, I don't like the government involvement in college athletics, but these are your highest paid state employees, right? I think the governor should probably be involved in those things, unfortunately. And to which I asked why. Kyle says the governor should probably be very aware of who his highest paid employees are.
Well, you can be aware of it. I mean, for years, for decades, the only time you'd see Ben Nelson is if he'd show up to a national championship celebration, or you might see him at a game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is possible. And again, I get it. That's the way of the world now. Politicians got to stick their noses in everything. And especially when you have a prominent politician who used to play at the university and was a prominent figure at the university and was a regent at the university, I'm not surprised by it. I think it can make for dangerous, and some might say, well, how could this hurt? Well, I think one of the most delicate balancing acts you have to have when you're a coach is to be able to, because the beauty of sports is it brings people from all walks of life together for a common cause. Not every Chicago Cubs fan is a bleeding heart liberal or a dyed-in-the-wool conservative.
Mm-hmm.
There are mixtures. Not every fan of Nebraska is blood red or sky blue.
Correct.
When it comes to their politics. And so if you're a coach or if you're someone in athletics, an athletic director who has to reach out to that diverse group of people for money, for support, for backing of any kind, you got to be able to play both sides. You got to be able to stay in the middle of the road and not get veered off into the ditch. And that can be a delicate balancing act. Because the last thing you want to do, I mean, there's a reason why most, not all, most coaches veer far away from making any public statements about politics.
Yeah,
a few do. I mean, the Bob Knights of the world certainly did. Kim Mulkey, who's in the news.
But it doesn't do them any good.
It only does them good if they're willing to alienate whatever side they're not on. And as we have seen in this society, it is so much easier now to alienate people just by sharing an opinion. There are people, when they listen to this show, when they hear me spouting off about something maybe political, who don't agree with me.
Typical Lib John.
And they will dismiss me.
John.
Or vice versa if it comes from Josh.
Yeah.
Because people are now so tribalistic when it comes to these things that they only want to hear their thing. So it's a careful balancing act when you're a coach or you're a fundraiser or you're an athletic director and you're asking people for support, that you're trying to bring these two sides together and not alienate everybody. Well, when you decide to lean all in, and when it comes, I mean, the scenario could be out there, right? Where you're going after a 5-star player. And that 5-star player and that family comes from a background that is different than what the politics of the coach or the athletic director or the people above them are. And there might be folks that I don't want you going there.
Don't be surprised if that has consequences.
I don't want you going there. I don't want you going there because they did this, that, or the other thing. That's the danger of when politics bleeds into sports in this day and age.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, it's not getting better. It's getting worse. We're getting more tribalistic. We're not getting less understanding of people who have differing beliefs. And that's why I am nervous when politicians get too deeply involved in sports. I'm not saying they can't support the team, be a fan of the team, show up and do the dog and pony act at the championship celebrations and all that other stuff. But when their imprint is so overt and so known and so prevalent in decision making, it can lead to bad results because not everybody thinks the same as you do.